Welcome, everybody, to the Modern Mystics podcast. My name is Kaivalya, and I am thrilled and honored to introduce the lead mentor on the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy teacher training, Alyssa Arroyo. I've known this incredible teacher, amazing woman, very accomplished yogini and acrobat for over a decade, and she has so many incredible things to share with you. In inviting her on the podcast today, I asked what she wanted to share most about. And one of the things that we see a lot in our online teacher training is that people begin to struggle and they are having a hard time sometimes getting to the finish line or submitting a test or doing a test over. And she wanted to share some ideas and thoughts around how to finish, how to overcome challenge and struggle. And I know Alyssa very well, and I know that she is absolutely an expert at this. So welcome to the podcast, Alyssa.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Alana. I'm really thrilled to be on a podcast with you, especially after knowing you so long and knowing how long you've been doing these.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness.
I have been doing podcasts a while, it's true. I started in 2005, so we've been podcasting for a long time. I'm actually surprised that this is the first time that you're on the podcast, and that is my bad for waiting so long to invite you, but we'll have you on much more from here on out. So Alyssa, why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey? I mean, I know right now, I mean, you're not at the end of your journey. None of us is, but right now in your journey, you are one of the lead mentors with us on the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy, and you bring so much to our group of students and to our community. But how did you get here?
Oh, wow. Let's start from the beginning. I've been teaching yoga for, I think we just did the math, and it's over 11 or 12 years now.
That sounds about right, yeah.
About right. And I've been guiding teacher trainings and working with teacher trainings for a very long time.
Yeah.
Part of that chunk of my teaching. When I was thrown into leading my first teacher training, I did not feel ready. And that's how I met you, Alana. Like, I was introduced to you and you guided me into being a teacher for teachers. Mm-hmm. And I realized that a big part of being a teacher along the way, the whole way through, is always being a student, always learning, and to some extent always feeling like I don't know if I know it all yet, but I'm going to share what I know and keep learning.
I love that. I mean, and that's true. You know, I've been very lucky and privileged to have witnessed you throughout the journey of you as a teacher and as a lead teacher trainer. You've always had this incredible willingness to just get up and do the thing, you know, get up and teach, get up and share, even when you had maybe some hesitation or reservation around it. And that was always incredibly inspiring to me, because one of the things we hear a lot from our yoga teacher training students is, oh, I don't feel ready to teach. So if you hear a student say that, what do you usually tell them?
They are ready.
Yeah.
Or like, they are more ready than they know. And I would just like to thank you for calling it hesitation, when in reality what it feels more like sometimes is terror. They read your first 3-hour lecture on the Bhagavad Gita and then like, okay, I guess I will. I'll try. I'll do it. And if I bomb it, I'm going to get feedback from you about it. Yeah. I'm going to grow from that process, and then I'll be able to serve my students better the next time. If when you don't feel ready, and chances are maybe like there's a gut feeling and you're like, I'm not ready to teach my first class. Maybe you're not quite ready to be in your first class. That's fine, but it doesn't mean you're not meant for it. Mm-hmm. Maybe give a little bit more time to the teaching, mm-hmm. To the learning. But there is a big part of this process that's just like, put yourself out there and don't be afraid to, and I'm doing air quotes when this goes on the podcast, but fail.
Yeah.
Associate like getting something wrong with, oh my gosh, it's the end of it all. I've gotten a bad mark. I've gotten a bad review, a bad feedback. I must be bad. I associate myself as this. And instead it's a chance for you to learn how to do something differently. And how lucky are we to now know what we maybe shouldn't do again.
Absolutely. I think that this is such an important key thing to spend a moment with. And I want to just fill in my podcast listeners who I know that many of our podcast listeners are in our teacher training online with us, but some of them may not be. And so it's relevant for us to share that as part of our teacher training, we do have extensive testing that comes along with extensive feedback from you and your fellow mentors. And we do hold people to elevated standards. We want them to be their best possible teacher, which does sometimes mean letting people know that they need to do an assignment again or that they need to resubmit. And, this is relevant for everybody listening, even if you're not a part of our online teacher training, because in life, you are sometimes going to fail. In life, you are sometimes not going to get things correct the first time. This is something that we work with throughout our teacher training with our students. So, Alyssa, what do you do? How do you handle that failure? How do you integrate it into your process in becoming an even better yoga teacher or spiritual leader?
When you said like how do you approach your failure, yeah, I just
Yeah.
thought of something that I say quite often in teaching, in classes, and your yoga practice is not always like the what happens to you. It's not what gets handed to you. It's how you choose to react to what's handed to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you get that information, you have a choice. You have a
Mm-hmm.
choice to give up on myself, or do I keep going and keep growing? And part of it is flipping it in your mind, and you kind of have to pump yourself back up and be like, you've got this, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again and not give up on it. And yeah, and ask for help. I don't know if I
That's a
can
good
say that.
one.
It's so big. Like when you're feeling stuck, someone else has felt stuck before you. If you can't get something, I guarantee someone you look up to struggled with it as well. And if you ask them for help, they're more than willing to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we overlook as being an incredibly valuable learning experience and part of becoming a yoga teacher, especially with us in our online program, is this process of growing through feedback. Is this process of allowing yourself to maybe not be at your best, give it a try, receive the feedback and the prompts to like, here's where you can really shine. We don't get that very often in life. And I think there is, especially nowadays, a culture of not offering feedback or not saying anything or trying to, it's almost like an avoidance of negativity or even an avoidance of conflict. And not all feedback is bad and not all conflict is bad. And there's so much growth in that. And in particular for us, there's so much spiritual growth in that. So, what do you think about all that? What do you think about like, people maybe who haven't stretched this muscle of learning and growing through feedback? Like, how do we help them a little bit more?
Hmm. I I'd like to suggest maybe looking at this as like the way that we look at the ego in yoga,
Absolutely.
not you personally. We are existing without all of the finishing of the sentence. I am
Uh-huh.
succeeding, a teacher, a student. Like you just are. And it's beautiful. That's your Atman. Um, and I think sometimes when we start to feel like we can't push back, it's because the ego gets in the way. Because we start to feel like we
Yes.
want that. And my biggest advice is to try your hardest to step back and remove yourself from it.
Mm-hmm.
Remind yourself that at the end of the day, if you are going to be trying to teach or trying to be a beacon for something that's true and already existing, you're not creating it. You're just making it clear and passing it along. So coming back to that and trying to step back and not it's not about you. In the best of ways, it's not about you.
Totally. We hear that all the time, like, don't take things personally, right? And that
Hard.
feels so difficult because sometimes it feels like just everything is personal, like this sun salutation, the breath count was wrong, or, you reversed the inhales and exhales. And that has nothing to do with your value as a human being. That has nothing to do with whether we think you're amazing or not, because it's very likely that we do think you're amazing. That just has to do with the fact that in a sun salutation, you inhale when you raise the arms up and you exhale when you fold forward. And we're going to make sure that you know that and make sure that when you step out that you have as much confidence as possible. I love this targeting, Alyssa, of the ego is kind of the culprit here, and the challenge of really allowing us to flourish through this helpful feedback system, because our goal in becoming spiritual leaders is always just that we're going to serve others to our highest ability. And that often means being able to get out of our own way. Right? Being able to get out of our own way. So what kinds of things do you teach people to help like loosen the ego and help them get out of their own way to some extent?
Like in mentoring or in teaching, when it comes to this, my biggest advice, and it's something that I come back to constantly in my own teaching, is beginner's mind.
Yeah.
This idea that even though you, as much as you know, as
Yeah.
much like you know, can you also acknowledge that there's so much you don't know and that is waiting for you to learn it? And I think that keeping that idea of beginner, just the word beginner's mind, when I think of it, it's already humbling. It already knocks me down. I'm like, always a beginner, always have a teacher, always have someone that I'm willing to ask for help. And yeah, that's come back to the beginner's mindset. Never ever believe that you're past being a student.
That's awesome. And what about people who are just afraid of failure? Or those who really like, I mean, I know this is true for me too, as a person, as a human being. Like anytime I do something or execute something, I'm looking to please others, right? People pleaser. And if I receive negative feedback, it can mean to me personally, right, with the ego that, oh my gosh, like I didn't do it right, I'm not good enough, I failed. How do we work with those folks like me?
Like me too. You know me after this like past decade, I take things personally.
Yeah, for sure.
How to deal with it, the feeling of it. I it's such yoga answers. Like there's this game that I play when I get into my head about failure. Is that factor feeling.
Uh-huh.
And I'll sit there and it's like, okay, so if I bomb this test, what does that mean? I'm the worst. Is that a factor of feeling? That's a feeling. It's not a fact. Okay, it means I can't be a teacher. Is that a factor of feeling? No, that's a feeling. That's an emotional response. But oftentimes if I sit down and I play this little game I have called fact or feeling, I'll find out that so much of my reality or what's going on in Rita are just emotions getting the best of me.
I love that. That's awesome.
It's just like, no, you did pretty good. You might need support in this area. Okay, like it helps us to kind of not let it get blown out of proportion.
Yeah, because it's the feeling bit that gets us turned around and that gets us upside down, not the facts. I think all of us are smart human beings, and presented with the facts, we can really discern and understand like, oh, we did it this way. It needs to be this way. We'll just learn and do it that way in the future. It's the feelings part that gets us upside down. So I love that, and I feel like we should make little game boards, factor feeling.
And nights I've like gotten myself in a head spiral about something in my life because I sat there and played factor feeling.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another thing that we encounter a lot in our online teacher training, and I know that, Alyssa, you probably hear from students in our program every day that it's like they've reached like a mental block. Like let's say they have a test coming up, and it's just maybe it's not their favorite topic within yoga, right? Because yoga is broad and vast. Not all of us are anatomy and movement experts like you are. Not all of us are philosophy and mythology experts like I'm supposed to be. Like there are parts of it. It's just like going through school. Like I didn't like my social studies class, but like I loved my math class, but we still had to go to social studies class, right? So I feel like some people get stuck when there's a test or something coming up that's maybe not in their, it's not, I wouldn't say it's not in their wheelhouse, because I believe everybody can do everything and can learn everything.
It's not their favorite topic.
It's not their favorite. And so they have like a block around it, and they just let that block stop them. Like they don't even get to the point where they submit something. What kind of advice would you give to that person?
This is a little bit more tough love advice, I guess, on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But what you said about school kind of is what I go back to. It's like the whole process of it may not always be your favorite part.
Mm-hmm.
But then so is life, right? Life is a whole bunch of gray, and then we have some bright highs and some darker lows, and you get to choose which parts you focus on. Most of us are going to want to go toward the bright highs.
Mm-hmm.
like. That's our raga devesha, like going towards what we like and avoiding what we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And a part of that is actually like being a human sometimes means in all areas of your life doing what you have to do to get it done.
Yeah,
So there's a part of it that's like it may not be my favorite, but I can't. You can do it.
yeah,
You can.
absolutely. And how good is it going to feel when you do, right?
Right. And it doesn't mean it has to be. Maybe you don't end up leaning into that. Like maybe you don't become an anatomy expert and talk about it all the time. But at least you have a base knowledge that you can help your students, and then you can dive into the mystic stuff or whatever is making your heart sing more. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember receiving, I was very lucky in my early years of yoga teaching and study that I had a wonderful teacher kind of right off the bat, thank goodness. And he was quite quotable. And so I have a lot of things that I still quote from him that I learned. And one of my favorites is that as yogis, we need to learn to lean into the sharp edges.
Mm.
That so much of this practice, so much of the true spiritual practice that we do as yoga teachers and students, is learning to get comfortable with discomfort. And you just, cited raga and excuse me, raga and devesha, right? And the kleshas and our human tendency, our ego's tendency to want to try and run after pleasure and move away from things that are challenging. But if we look at our lives, like if we really just take stock, you're absolutely right. A lot of it is just gray. A lot of it isn't those bright, high, pleasurable points. But what if we could learn to find satisfaction, joy, contentment,
Um,
um, relaxation, even in times that are not our favorite, even in situations or circumstances that are not, what we would consider to be pleasurable. What that does is it actually reduces suffering
mhm.
and it creates a more pleasurable life overall. So, I would think that this is an opportunity for us to lean into the sharp edge, that when we have something come up like a test perhaps in our online teacher training program that we don't want to do, that we just do it anyway, that's our sharp edge. We did our yoga practice for the day, and the yoga practice wasn't the test. The yoga practice was actually the getting the courage up to submit the test, right?
Right.
And eventually when you lean into enough sharp edges, nothing is sharp anymore.
You get smoothed out a lot.
Totally. Yeah.
What you were just saying with the sharp edges made me think like if I look back to those sharp edge memories in my life, the things I was resistant to doing, the things that were hard, those were usually the moments that molded me,
Yeah.
that showed me something about myself that pushed me, you know?
For better or for worse, Alyssa, that's true for everybody. That
Yeah.
we all, as humans, actually experience the most growth, the most personal, spiritual, emotional, professional, psychological growth when we move through something that has challenged us. We don't actually experience that much growth when we're moving through something that is just joyful and easy and fabulous. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's the case, but that's kind of the case, And so, as spiritual practitioners, I think it's so important that we understand that when we do something that's hard for us, it is an application of spiritual practice, that this is actually a part of the process, that we are going to spiritually grow from this. And, as yoga teachers, we can really only take other people as far as we've gone ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So if we haven't done the thing that we don't want to do, how in the world are we ever going to encourage others to do the thing that they don't want to do, but that we can really see like is going to be so beneficial for them?
When you can't take the step to do it yourself yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta walk the walk.
You absolutely have to walk the walk, Alyssa. I would love for you to share more about walking the walk and how important that is for us as yoga teachers.
Wow. Well, walk the walk is not, when I think about that, I'm not just thinking about on the mat. I'm thinking about literally everything I do is my choice to walk the walk of what I
Yeah,
teach.
absolutely.
The way that I interact with people, the way I'm on the subway, the way I choose my canvas bag to go to the grocery store. Every single little thing becomes a part of how I'm teaching others around me the way
Yeah.
to exist in the world. And so without realizing it, we're all teaching all the time.
Hmm.
We're all influencing each other. Some of us just become more aware of it and then use more consciously what we're sharing. So that applies to everything, not just when you're in front of students that are paying to be your student, but literally every interaction you have is an opportunity to be a teacher and to share lessons that you've learned through this practice.
Absolutely. You know, I have a funny story about this actually. So Alyssa and I both live in New York City. And as I think everyone listening will know and understand, New York City can be a pretty crazy, hectic place. So a long time ago, I used to teach in a studio in Union Square, and I had, I think, a class that was starting at 12:30. And as usual, I was running late. And so I was running up the subway stairs, and gosh, there was just a person in front of me who was going so slow. And it was just a day that I just had an epic amount of frustration, you know, and like many New Yorkers before me, I unfortunately kind of shoved this person out of the way to get up the stairs so that I could get to my yoga class at the right time to teach. I run into my class, I sit down, and who comes into my class but the person on the subway that I had just shoved to get there first. And it was such a, to be honest with you, a beautifully poignant moment for me about how important it is that it isn't just the moment that I walk in the studio door that, you know, my yoga hat or my yoga self, you know, comes out, or that I put my yoga hat on, but that this is really, it is really about you as a person, wholly and completely, and not just in the moments that you choose to step on the mat, but in every moment of your life. And I know that that can sound like a tremendous responsibility, and I will just say that it is. But the people walking this path, they're ready for that responsibility. And we often have to take a lot of personal responsibility to be able to walk this path and walk the walk, as you say.
Yeah, it does. It does sound daunting a little bit, doesn't it? Everything you do is a lesson to those around you. Oh my God, I better not mess it up. but but we will mess up, and that's the whole point of our talk, is we'll always mess up. And when you do mess up, can you be open to hearing from others around you
Yeah.
how to grow? And the idea of community too and connection is a big part when you're like, where do you go? You know, not just tough love when you're feeling frustrated, but like, do reach out, because anytime you've suffered, it's not been alone. Other humans have suffered with you, been confused with you, struggled. We just don't always voice it at the same time. So remembering that you're part of something greater, bigger, a community, whether it's an online teacher training community or just other humans that have had similar experiences.
Yeah.
Sometimes reminding yourself of that will empower you to get through the hard stuff, you know?
Well, and isn't doesn't this point to the tremendous importance in yoga that we place on mentorship?
Mm.
Because one of the things that I've always really held to in my learning and growth as a yoga teacher and spiritual leader is that when I'm looking to learn or grow, the people I want to ask about that learning or that growth are the people who are 10 steps beyond me. Right? I don't want to ask my peers who are doing the exact same thing that I am, you know, how do I do this? Because they're learning the same stuff. They might not know. I'm not saying they wouldn't have insight. They might have some great insight. But to make sure that if I'm going to take, you know, this what can be a challenging, painful process of learning and growth, I want to ask the right people. Is this the right way to grow? Is this the right way to evolve? And those people are mentors. I mean, I think it's incredible and amazing that all of our students in our online academy have you, Andrew, Emily, Jordan, all as mentors who have gone through the process and walked the walk to support them and to grow. But I think it's worth noting how important mentorship is in yoga. And I know that you've spent a lot of time as a mentor. And where have you seen that as being so important for students?
Oh my gosh. Mentorship is invaluable. I mean, I'm still being mentored to this day by you. Like, I'm just, you said that, and I was thinking of what, like 2 weeks ago when I text you in the morning, very upset, and I'm like, can we talk about the concept of grace?
Yeah.
Come on. Who else was I going to message about that? Like, at 2 p.m. to chat with me about grace in our great karma cycles, you know?
At 7 a.m.
Thank you.
Yep. Anytime for you, Alyssa, anytime.
Thank you. Um, God, it's invaluable because to have someone truly that is invested in you, that believes in you, that you know is cheerleading you, and almost, I think of it like in therapy. Like, I can go to a therapist and say anything and not feel like they're going to get mad at me for what I said.
Right,
Like
because that's their job.
a relationship, similar with a mentor, like I'm there just to guide you. So like, I'm not upset if you mess up. I just want to see you succeed. I'm there to be your biggest cheerleader, and knowing that you have that support without having to earn it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us had this idea of like, we have to be earning all the time a certain value to like get.
Oh, that's interesting.
You are doing great. I'm here to support you. I'm here to ask questions because you know what? We all have our own little things that are going to boggle our minds, and they're worth noting.
Yeah.
It's it helps you grow so much in the specific areas that you need your growth
Right.
versus just keep going along through bigger programs, not ever having one-on-one interactions.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that, I love this idea that you're saying that, you as a mentor, your job as a mentor is simply to be there to support your students' growth. There
Mhm.
isn't, and they don't have to earn it. It's not, there's not a, it's almost like that lovely concept of unconditional love. You are simply there to help and support their growth. There's no expectation. There's no judgment around it. I think it's a really unique scenario that you are providing this to students. And what I would hope for people listening, is that somewhere in their lives that they find that they seek that out, because it is such an important part of spiritual growth. It's a concept that has been inbuilt inside of yoga for its 5,000-year history, that there's always this relationship between teacher and student. And it is more than just a teacher-student relationship because of the fact that it's spiritual growth. We're not teaching math. We're not teaching people how to add numbers or subtract. Yeah, we're teaching them technical things, but ultimately everything people learn as a spiritual leader or yoga teacher has not only a tremendous and powerful effect on those that they work with, but also on themselves. So understanding and learning how to fail, how to move through challenge, how to do the hard things. It's not just going to get you to the end of the teacher training. It's also going to serve you in your ability to live life as a yogi. I mean, this is resilience building. And boy, don't we need resilience in 2020?
Honestly, I think learning to take feedback from teaching helped me to learn how to take feedback in my personal relationships better.
Yeah,
Because I realized that they weren't mad at me. They just wanted to see me be my better self.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what you're getting with mentorship. That
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you choose the right mentor, and I think that that's worth saying. Like,
is true.
there's a there's a line between, humility and humiliation, is what I was told long ago. That
Yeah.
when you're working with a mentor or a teacher, um, that you want to feel that sense of humility, like, wow, like they have so much to show me, they have so much to teach me, and you want to feel that sense of trust and safety with them. But you never want to feel humiliated. You never want to feel like you are less than, because this isn't a hierarchical relationship. It's just a clearly defined relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you and I both have had both sides of that coin
Yes, absolutely.
in the past. And so I think it helps us strive to be, the mentors and the teachers who simply want the best for our students because we want the best for their students, and so on and so forth.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you and I are going to have a product brainstorm and launch on our yes or was it fact or feeling game?
After feeling. Yeah.
So all our podcast listeners can look in the future for our little board game of fact or feeling.
I love that actually. I bet it'd be really useful for children. Because
Yeah, or adults or stubborn adults.
all the time. It'd be great. Okay, well,
Uh-huh.
back on that. I'm into it.
So, Alyssa, tell us a little bit more before we close out here on our podcast today. Where can people find you? What are you up to? How did they connect with you?
Lord. Well, as you mentioned, I'm in New York City, based here, going through COVID times here.
Hmm.
I teach with Moto Yoga New York City, and we have an online platform, so I offer online classes with them. I am on Instagram, and I have classes on that handle. It's alyssa.yoga.love. Um, and I teach acrobatics. That was also mentioned at a circus school in New York called the Muse. If you're interested in getting upside down, once we reopen, I can teach you a whole bunch of fun, very not yoga movements. Mhm. And yeah, if you're looking to connect with me, you can find me either on my Instagram handle, on my website. It's Alyssa Arroyo, ALYSSA ARROYO.com.
Awesome. And then, of course, you are one of our lead mentors in the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy, and they can find you all day, every day there.
You can email me all the time.
That's right. You'll get an opportunity to connect personally with Alyssa when you join us in the Academy if you're not already a part of it. And we are so very grateful to have you, Alyssa. You are quite a powerhouse, and it's just been an honor and a pleasure to have known you for all this time and to continue to be a part of your journey.
I feel the very same. And I'm really glad to be working on this. And I'm so glad to finally do a podcast with you.
We'll have you on many, many more, Alyssa. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.